everyone seems to be connected that's here. Um, I'm Hank Levin, and most of you know me. And I was the editor of the Free Spirit Journal and designer of several kinds of meters and author and coach and personal consultant. Norma, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hank's wife. My name is Norma Novi, and I've been when we first met, we were all excited because we were both dealing in spirits. And I'm a graduate of the Berkeley Psychic Institute and many other spiritual programs. So I'm always interested in anything to do with spirits or beings or hearing voices or whatever.
Yeah. And so Norma is also a practitioner and a consultant. And Tom, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Tom Tibbetts, and I live in Texas, and I've been involved with Hank for, 15, 20 years? Sessions. So this is exciting. I'm interested in this subject, too.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And Tim?
Yeah, my name is Tim Lewis. I'm in North Carolina, and I've been in Scientology. Started off Scientology in 1989, but more recently, since 2013, got involved with David St. Lawrence and Roger Boswarva, and eventually, Hank, and I just enjoy spiritual processing.
Yeah. That's a neat domain you've got. What it's called spiritual-processing.com. It's very nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Thank you.
By the way, do you know where Roger is?
I don't know. I saw he was part of your group, so I was expecting to see him.
Yeah. Well, so be it.
Haven't talked to him in a while.
And Ed?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody just joined us, and let's see.
Oh, there's Ed. Yeah.
Oh, there's Ed. Yeah. Hi, Ed.
Hello.
Okay. So, Paul, we're introducing ourselves. And Paul?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, everybody. You look like a blue phone. I mean, a white phone on a blue background.
A blue, I didn't get that. Blue what?
A white phone on a blue background.
Oh.
Now you're looking at somebody else's, someone else. I think he's coming. Yeah, Paul's video is working. It's on.
All right.
And Ed, yours keeps flicking on and off, but we'll get to you in a minute. Paul, introduction.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a lot to say. I've been in this business, around this business since
I know.
About the middle 60s, about 63, 64.
Yeah.
And off and on, I'm part of Roger's group these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you are, well, if Roger would come, he could talk about his group a little bit, but...
Roger who?
Roger Boswarva.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And whose telephone number ends with 1215?
That's Paul Susenbach.
Paul Susenbach. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I'll try to remember that. I don't know why you did not show up as your name.
Well, the Zoom did not connect, so I just came in through the phone.
Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we had some connectivity problems, and I was on the phone when we started with Zoom, and that's quite all right. I'll just have to remember 1215. Okay, and Ed, I see you now. You were kind of off and on there.
I'm in a place where the Wi-Fi is not great.
You also have quite a bright light behind you.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
you're
that I
severe.
can't help.
You're
There's a
severely
window.
backlit. I know. It's a win. I can recognize that.
I'm with an iPhone, and I'm certainly not gonna set it down and give you a look of the ceiling fan or something else. So I don't know.
That's quite all right.
We'll do what we can do.
Where are
Yeah.
you located, Ed?
Los Altos, California. It's in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. We're familiar.
Okay.
And Paul, where are you located?
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Ah, I see.
Paul's
And
North Carolina. And Tim, are you in North Carolina?
Yes, I am. And I'm in below Fayetteville in Lumberton.
and Paul Susanbach, we're well. Let's get a little introduction for you.
Right. I'm at Glencoe, Brunswick, Georgia.
Ah, Georgia. The East is quite well represented.
Yes.
So let's start the subject, which is hearing voices. And I assume everyone's got some interest in this. And we can...
I'm assuming we're talking about spiritual teammates, guardian angels, that kind of thing.
Well, this depends on whom you're talking to. I have, and Norma has, and I'm sure probably most of us have a very different concept of this than is acceptable or understood in establishment wellness therapy. Most people. Let me get something up on the screen here. Okay.
No, there it goes.
Here's a list of questions, and this is part of a program that Norma and I are working on right now that is addressed to people who hear voices, but generally don't have any real idea of where they're coming from. And as you can imagine, that could be quite disturbing, quite disorienting. And so what we're doing is showing them this questionnaire as part of an initial essay. And these are questions that you would ask a person who is concerned about hearing voices that doesn't have that much of a spiritual background or workable spiritual background. There are people who have spiritual backgrounds, meaning they're religious, but subjectively, they really don't understand the difference between a body and a spirit. And that is the normal human condition in this country. So you would ask them, do you hear voices? If you do, have you told anyone why or why not? Have you or someone close to you decided you were crazy because you heard voices? Now, I think if we know other people, especially people who are very religious in a conventional sense, you can see that these are very apt questions. How long has this been happening to you? Have you told a psychologist or psychiatrist about this? What was their diagnosis? Did anyone label you as bipolar or schizophrenic? And if you explore the internet, you'll find that websites that deal with hearing voices, especially if they have to do with mental health, they generally consider that this phenomenon is a result of insufficient prescription drugs in their bloodstream. And they get diagnosed as being bipolar, schizophrenic, or mentally unstable, or something like that. Those of us that have been involved with this for a long time, especially who have partaken of David St. Lawrence's perspective, and anybody who's worked with me, of course, and probably most of the people here. This is not really considered an illness, but a lot of people get diagnosed as mentally unstable or mentally infirm or schizophrenic on the basis of the fact that they hear voices. And it's very interesting that, I don't know what Hubbard's personal view on this was, but I know in his organization, if it came up in a session that you heard voices, you got a tag in your folder and you were considered a degraded being or crazy, basically.
Really?
You become restricted from all kinds of services on the basis of that you hear voices.
I think you have to define what year you're talking about.
Well, when I was in there, which might have been quite a while back, that was I got out of there in probably mid 70s. I mean,
I left in 76.
Yeah, I was affiliated with them without being active for quite a while, and you know, the divisions were not or the boundaries were not necessarily tightly defined, because, you know, we couldn't stand it. We got out of there, but we didn't want to be cut off unnecessarily, so we keep our feelers in there and find out. And as far as I know, I don't know when that policy changed. You say that it changed, Ed?
No, I'm just saying that Scientology has dramatically altered, and I would say dramatically altered starting around 1976. I think
that could be. I don't know.
but
In
it
what
also
case?
dramatically altered for lots in 66, but whatever.
Yeah.
Every generation of Scientologists has their own viewpoint of what Scientology is, and
Yeah.
it helps to define what your definition of Scientology is by what dates you were involved.
I see. Well, I did not keep my hand on that pulse, and after a certain point, my main interest in Scientology was how to keep their attorneys intimidated, so that they would stay away from me. And being successful with that, I had little interest in their current viewpoint toward anything.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I don't want to give them any more of our energy right now than we need to, but it's an interesting background, and I did bring it up, didn't I?
Yeah.
So the other questions that you can ask is, and this is a key one. Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. Well, does this voices thing run in your family? Have you ever been institutionalized for hearing voices? And of course, if somebody answers these in the positive, there's probably a lot of charge on the subject. Have you ever asked questions of the voice or voices, or had two-way conversations with them? That's a really interesting question, because ultimately, to get on top of any of this, that is absolutely essential. And you'll find therapists who deal with it, go into it very deeply, or they think they're going into it deeply, and they'll ask a lot of intelligent questions like, how long has it been happening, and what do the voices sound like, and how many of them are there, and all of these things. They're great questions, but very, very few people ever say, I want to talk to one of the voices. I have a question. Can you get him up here? Okay. Here's my question. You ask a question. And what does the voice say? And either the person will sit there and tell you what the voice says, or the voice will come right through like a channel. There are all kinds of ways this can manifest, but the important thing, the key to really dealing with this intelligently is two-way communication. Isn't that right, Tim?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And without that, all the rest of the stuff is just research, and it's academic, but you're not going to really, help the person. Anyhow, so it is. Has everyone seen as much as they want of this? Can I take it off the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That'd
Good.
be fine.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Very good. Um, I have a control bar up at the top that appears. Okay, so um, I have a question for the people here. Have any of you yourselves heard voices?
Can I start?
Yes, certainly.
All right. So I'm 68 to put this in perspective. I was born in 1950. When I hit 18, I was eligible for the draft, and I was not interested in being cannon fodder.
Uh-huh.
And my father wasn't interested in me being cannon fodder either. He'd been in World War II. Anyway, the draft gives you a questionnaire, and I checked everything. You name it. I checked homosexual, drug addict, minister, conscientious objector, you name it, I checked it. And the first letter from the draft board, and the draft board is a generic term, but it's actually locally a real body of, I don't know, 5 or 6 people who are VIPs. And so I got a form letter from the draft board saying, tell us why you're a conscientious objector, and send us a letter from someone who knows you saying you are. And so I just turned to the person 4 or 5 feet away from me, Al Rabisi, who you may or may not know, and said, would you write me a letter saying I'm a conscientious objector? And on the hood of my friend's car, he wrote that letter right then and there, and I sent it back to the draft board. And several months later, I got a call to come in and see the real draft board, the actual people in the Santa Clara County who were the draft board at Community Bank. And the first question out of the head of the draft board's mouth was, how do you know Dr. Albert Rabisi? Well, Dr. Albert Rabisi was my friend's father, and someone I knew who would have written me the letter had I asked him, but hadn't thought about it. But it was apparent that the head of the draft board knew who Dr. Albert Rabisi was. He was president of O'Connor Hospital. He was a world-renowned heart surgeon. He was somebody.
Where are we going with this for hearing voices?
You'll see in just 1 second. Anyway, I had hair down past my shoulders. I was wearing bell bottoms and probably a black turtleneck. And I was not your straight Christian kid with pleated pants and wingtips and collars that had buttons on them.
Hearing voices.
I didn't go to church. And I'd probably been to church 10 times in my life. Anyway, I got
hearing voices. Hearing voices.
This is a Shaggy Dog story, but we're almost there. So, whereas I knew people at my high school who didn't get a CO, conscientious objector, status, who were all those things, straight arrows, Christians, etc. I got a CO out of that, and the reason I got it was because I was connected to a VIP. And as I was leaving the draft board, and I knew I had a CO at that point, in my space, and I can't define it any better way, all of this confetti kept going off, high-fiving, etc. My spiritual teammates, and I don't have a better word, had set this up. They had engineered it outside of the physical universe, creating it to manifest inside the physical universe. And it was at that point, I was well aware that there are beings all around me who are working on my team.
Very good. Did you actually hear voices?
I heard celebration.
Ah.
And I understood exactly what they were saying. I mean, you know, when I was 16, my dog died, and he was outside, and he came inside without his body and told me he was dead. I mean, when my mother died, I knew when she was around. When my dead dogs have died, I knew when they were around. That's basically what I'm talking about, is knowledge transmitted without the physical universe.
Thank you for sharing that. So
That was fascinating.
yeah, it's quite fascinating, and it feels like you were not terribly startled and disoriented by that. It feels like it was like just part of your natural
Absolutely.
perception. Yeah. And so let me hear from someone else. Have you heard Paul Fairchild, have you heard voices?
I started hearing voices when I was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I used to tell my mother about these people, and she would say I was just making it up or just imagining it. And it kind of went away after a couple, 3 years. By the time I was 10 or so, I didn't hear voices anymore. Later, much later in my adult life, I started hearing voices, and I have conversations with my spiritual team. I got off this huge withhold in a session to my spiritual team, and it was like I was in the middle of a stadium, and the whole stadium was filled with teammates, and they were cheering. I mean, it was overwhelming. It really was.
That's great. Yeah.
And I have plants and animals that talk to me too. I can take a walk in the woods, and I was really. They don't always speak in English. Sometimes it's just a sort of a holographic image of
pictures,
of a concept. But occasionally, I'll actually hear a voice in plain English out of the blue from this plant or from this animal.
You've heard of George Washington Carver?
Yeah. Did he hear voices from the plants?
Yeah, he'd walk in. His research consisted primarily of walking around the woods, and the plants would tell him what they were good for.
Yeah, they have their own world, but they have a ton of information.
Yeah. And Paul Susanbach, what's been your experience with this?
Nah, I haven't had any.
It's all quiet in there.
Have you helped anybody that has heard voices?
No, not really. Not really.
But you have some interest in this phenomenon.
Yes, I do. I have clients who are certainly coming back from the war, and have battered women and men. who have other illnesses. So that's part of their issues, and working with some who have multiple personalities.
Ah, yeah. The multiple personality thing is a big is a big issue. You know, a key basis for our understanding, I dare say, I think this speaks for all of us, for getting it into perspective, is understanding that the person and the body are two different things, not necessarily separate things.
In my area with them, I kind of keep it focused on surviving from their life experiences that are usually traumatic, early childhood abuse, adult life abuse, etc. Keeping it focused primarily in those areas rather than getting into something else. And it has to do with getting away from naming and blaming, the judgment of what they have done or have not done, into just accepting it as a survival mechanism that has kicked in wonderfully to get them to where they are right now.
A survival mechanism. Yeah. Well, you mean hearing voices?
Yes.
When they hear voices, yeah, it can be seen that way as a solution to a problem.
That allows us to go on and to do what we're doing, because a lot of them are afraid those voices are going to go away, that person is going to go away. My whole focus is on working with what happened in the abuse, surviving that portion of it, reducing the emotional content to the trauma, and then come back into the here and now.
Of course, and you have a context that you're working in that that supports that makes sense. Of course, there are people that just hear voices,
Yes.
and you can insist that it's based on a trauma. You can also insist that it's based on an imbalance of chemicals.
Correct.
Of bioelectronics. And if someone's trying to explain it away without moving outside of their current reality, that might be helpful. Some of us actually get deeply involved with this, and I have to tell you, my first experience on this path was accidental. And I'm going to take a chance right now and try to share it with you. I'm going to try to share it with you. You recognize what this is?
It's a deck of cards, but now there's a person shown.
There's a deck of, well, it's a deck of cards. I'm holding up a deck of cards. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to shuffle this deck. Hold it toward myself. Okay. And I'm going to ask everyone here, okay, what card am I looking at?
I have no idea.
5 of hearts.
Who said that?
I did. Tom.
The man. Oh, Tom.
Well done. Yay.
I just saw a heart, and I knew it was a heart, and 5 popped up.
Okay. Question. Do you use your eyes?
No, I was looking at you.
Was it reflecting in my glasses?
No. No,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a picture I just picked up.
Yeah. What part of your body did you use that if you didn't have that part of your body, you wouldn't have seen it?
Well, part of my eyes look, but I didn't really use the body.
Your eyes look. What did they see?
I saw a heart.
What did your eyes see?
I just saw you.
Yeah. So what came through your eye holes was just, you know, something else. I mean, you could have seen a plant or a pussycat or something, but you would still have seen the five of hearts. So we're looking at mental images. Okay, when that happened to me in the late 60s, early 70s, it changed a lot of things. First of all, I realized that there was no physiological explanation for it. I actually spent an evening with a friend doing this and goofing with it and studying psychology in an Ivy League college. I had never been presented this. I had never been shown this. It never even come up as a controversial subject. And here I'm doing this with her. And the other thing that was very evident, if I could do this with her, actually she was doing it. She was doing more of the receiving. I was doing more of the sending. But if we could do this, anybody could do it.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't I know about this? I'm supposed to be an educated person. 4.5 years of college. What happened? And so this got me looking and looking and looking. And there are a lot of corollaries here that don't come up right away. One is that if I can see another person's thought, can I perceive their headache? Can I perceive their feeling of anxiety? Can I, if I do perceive it,
Yes.
whose is it? I mean, I could see a picture of Queen of Diamonds, and all of a sudden it comes up, and do I know even to ask, whose Queen of Diamonds is this? Why is this coming up? You see? And sometimes you can get a thought that's embarrassing, sexual. And isn't it nice to know whose it is? Because if you can pick these thoughts up from another person, some people are a little twisted, and you might get a picture of sex with animals or something violent or something totally irrelevant or inappropriate.
You just have to ask whose it is.
Yeah, it's exactly. That's it. That's all you have to do.
Somebody will answer up, believe me.
But but this is not done in our establishment therapies. You see, because it's beyond their reality. But if you forget their reality and just leave that for a bit, okay, so they're really literally in the dark ages. Well, I still need to find out about this myself, because just because we have had this experience doesn't mean, and everyone here has had this experience on a third flow. Tom actually experienced it, but we were watching him, and we see that it's happening. And I'm sure nobody thinks that we've set this up or staged this. So on a third flow, in other words, you've seen two other people have it so close to you that it's like you were there. You're participating in it. But have you derived all the corollaries for it? In other words, there are implications here. One implication is, how safe are your secrets? You see? And this is terrifying to people. most people walk around with what we call withholds. They're
Mhm.
the secrets that are discreditable. We would be terribly embarrassed if a person knew what we were thinking. It could be it could be an issue about tax evasion, or it could just be looking at a woman and really admiring her big breasts without her wanting to see you do this. I mean, you don't want her to say, I'm up here. You don't want to be embarrassed like that, so you try to hide this, and that becomes a kind of a withhold. And those of us who have studied withholds and guilt, withholds precipitate feelings of guilt, and they also precipitate weird defensive behavior, critical behavior. So all of this stuff has to do with pictures and how secure you are in knowing that your pictures are totally private. Now, I don't go around looking at people's pictures and trying to pry, but sometimes you want to know. And those of us who do therapy know that if you ask a person a question, very often, especially if it's a charged item for that person, very often you get the answer to that question before they see it.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Actually, I get the question before because I'm looking at what the right question is.
Yeah.
But to get back to what the person before you was talking about, he was talking about multiple personalities. And I can tell you that what happens when somebody gets overwhelmed or intimidated by a situation is their teammates take over and they stand back and just let it happen. And the teammates, using whatever skills they have, do their best to cope while the superior or dominant person is out in hiding.
Yeah, exactly, and that's part of that's one of the mechanisms, or part of the principal mechanism where a person lets go, abdicates. They abdicate the control of the situation and let somebody take over that they think might be more capable.
I agree.
And sometimes
that's the exact word.
Sometimes that works, and sometimes the one that takes over is a moron. Is more trouble.
Stop talking about our president.
Is more trouble than they're worth. You see, the person that comes into your space or being. Interesting concept about beings and persons. I like to say that the difference between someone with a body and someone without a body is highly overrated. So how do you know how to address something, whether you're addressing someone with a body or someone without a body? Well, there's not that much difference. There's actually, in a sense, very little difference. When you talk to a person, they tend to pick up what you're about to say a moment before you say it. You see.
Well, I'd like to add something to what Paul talked about, and I'm sorry, what is your name? Where is your picture?
Huh.
He has a dog. There we go. Ed Berwick.
Yes.
Yes.
This is me.
And that is having teammates.
Yeah.
All around. And I don't necessarily hear the voices but as I said, I get pictures, I get like a holographic thing. I ask questions. If that's a big thing. If you're doing a session, like, oh help, what question what's the big question here that I need to, that will break everything open?
Right.
And then I get it, you know.
Are you an Ellen Walters person too?
No, I'm not a Scientology person at all.
Okay, because the word holographic comes for me from Ellen Walter.
Yeah.
But
for me, it's an accurate
that's all.
description of what I see. So.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a kind of a technical projection. The thing is where you go with this. Oh yeah, there's a mechanism by which this stuff becomes very problematic. It's when a person gets an image or an intention or even an energy flow, like a sexual energy flow. Okay, that's a good example. And they assume that it's theirs. They do not even question that it might be coming from somewhere else. And then that in itself is enough to make them very uncomfortable. Sometimes enough to make them think they're crazy. And then if this intention is persistent enough, also if it finds their vulnerabilities, in other words, it may want them to do something. And just like a salesperson, if you're selling motorboats, you're not going to go canvassing from house to house in a neighborhood trying to sell people motorboats. You'll drive up and down the street and stop at the houses where people already have motorboats, and you'll go in there and try to sell them a new one. It's much more energetically efficient. So if some being has an idea that they want something that the people might resist getting involved with, like violent encounters, some kind of morbidity, some kind of illness that they want to work out with a body, and they don't have a body anymore, so they like to use your body to work. All kinds of things like that. Sex with animals, whatever. They will go to the person that already has these issues and pour energy onto that. And the person will assume that it's coming from themselves. And the name for this phenomenon is called misownership. Has anyone ever used that word, misownership?
No.
I've used that word a lot.
Ed has, yeah. So, misownership, let's say spirit influence or spirit possession cannot take place without misownership. We're all, I think, familiar with SPPTS phenomena.
I have no idea what that stands for.
What? Suppressive persons and potential trouble sources.
Oh, okay.
The idea of a person who is suppressive is stealing energy from another person, and generally intends the other person's demise, intends to make them weaker, because they don't believe they can make their own energy, and so they have to steal it from other people. And so they're suppressive. They're human sharks, whatever you want to call them. And so Hubbard put a lot of attention into this phenomenon. I think some of it was misled, but I think the basic concepts, he was channeling these concepts. And the basic
it came from Ellen Walter, actually.
Well, I think they came from way before. What the way Hubbard got them. Some of the stuff he just stole from other people, but some of the stuff
Right. Well,
he
that was what he got from Alan Walter.
was
That
okay.
that particular
Yeah.
thing.
Well, there's a lot to it. That I appreciate your sentiment on that, but he did a lot of work with that, and some of it he misinterpreted, and some of it, frankly, I think he abused. But
Yeah.
the concept is quite valid, and he never really thought so much in terms of energy or stealing energy. That's more my idea, and I can tell you where the ideas came from, but that's an academic discussion, where ideas came from. But the idea of misownership is very important, and you can have people who misown to the point where they act out in such a way they become incarcerated as criminally insane.
Good point.
Yeah. So all of these things are very, 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 very relevant. And unfortunately, the establishment, our wellness establishment, and that includes family ministers and people who give spiritual uh, uh, spiritual advice and comfort, supposedly. They mishandle this information and they cause more trouble than they're worth. By just telling a child or the parents of a child who is seeing things or hearing voices that this is from the devil, you've basically expelled the child from their community, from their dynamic. This is something the child will not be able to live down until they leave home. This is a terrible thing to do. The solution to schizophrenia is always drugs. So what drug will handle your hearing your voices? Well, I'm sure we can find enough drugs that will get it so you won't hear anything and you won't bother anybody anymore, and you'll just sit there quietly and behave yourself. And sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes mentally insane people, they come off their meds. Why do they come off their meds? Well, the beings don't like not being able to act out. You've ruined their game, and the person doesn't like being wiped out to where they can't do anything. They can't think anything. They have no spontaneity. They become vegetables. So they go off their meds. And sometimes it's not a big deal, and sometimes the consequences are horrific. So this thing about hearing voices is a very, very very, very important issue in therapy. And there are some things that you might find it fascinating to explore. There is I guess it's a worldwide network organization now. It started in England. That's called IVN. No, HVN, Hearing Voices Network. And there's a United States installation of this. It's got quite a few chapters and members. And okay, Paul is leaving us. Thank you, Paul, for participating. So you can see what their gist is, how they deal with this stuff. I think they've probably helped a lot of people. They're very well-meaning, and a lot of people experience the hearing voices phenomenon as a very traumatic and disruptive experience, which they would like to stop. They would like it to go away. From what we know about it, there is no go away. On a spiritual level, there is no away. Away has to do with space. There's no space. It's a matter of being tuned into it and being uncomfortable.
Can I interject here?
Yeah.
For a couple minutes. I live in Silicon Valley, which is a wealthy enclave, and I audit people, which is a Scientology term. And I've audited the next door neighbor to the owner of Oracle and the people across the street. And one of the first things I talk about in getting them to talk is if they have connections with their grandparents or anybody who are dead, and it's always a yes.
Yeah.
And I mean, always. It's a given that we all, in at least my community, know that we're not alone, and our forefathers are with us and are on our team. And that's not a secret, and it's not a withhold, and it's not an upset. This is how we live. This is part of our drive in life, is to use all of our network. And our network is not fully physically based.
Right.
That's
well,
all.
Thank you. And if I may make a comment about this, there is this concept of our team. I'm not sure what Alan's approach was this. I know David is very much involved with the idea of having a team and getting them to work behind you. Just like with any team, it's good to know who you've got. It's good to know they are on your team. It's like walking into a small business and there's a gang of people there. And you think that these are all on your team. Well, they might not all be on your team. I mean, some might be predatory, some might be shoplifters. It'd be nice to know who is on your team and have some kind of criterion by which you evaluate a being and for their helpfulness or the opposite of it. Some beings are around basically to steal energy. It's not any different from going into a bar or going into a picnic where you don't know the people. And to just go into a bar and assume that everybody is just great and each person there is somebody you could go home with and all you guys are together and they're all behind you, that'd be a little stupid, right? And it's a problem with people that have no idea what they're doing. They take out a Ouija board and they start cold calling beings. And this can be fascinating. It can lead to great enlightenment, or it can lead to demonic possession. How can you tell the difference? Well, how can you tell the difference with people that you meet at a bar? You have to have questions that you ask. You have to have some sense of what is helpful. You have to have some sense of who is sucking your energy, who is contributing to your energy. Do you feel better from talking to the person? You see, and depending on our own foibles, some people, especially people who are very shy or arrogant, they can be manipulated with praise. Okay, so a being who
Right.
knows how to do this can manipulate you by praising you. And some of us have this particular feature more than others of us. Unfortunately, people around Hubbard realized that if they worshipped him or pretended to be worshiping him, they could get him to do anything.
Hmm.
And this turned out to be a huge personal liability that extended all the way down into the organization. Just because he had never figured out this phenomenon. There's no place that he writes about this on the bridge.
Hmm.
I can tell you later where I learned about it, fortunately. And I have other vulnerabilities, not that particular one. But this is something that one can learn to be careful of. Watch out for people who praise you. Just be aware. It's not that praise is not good. Just be aware of what their intention is. By the way, I want you to look on the lower right part of your screen. There is a box that says chat. It looks like a little word balloon thing. Okay? Does everybody see that?
Yep.
Oh, good.
I'm on a smartphone. I don't have that.
Well,
What did you say, Tim?
I'm on a smartphone. I don't have that chat button. I also don't have the selection to change from gallery to speaker view.
no, you don't have that switch. I have that switch.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I got it.
Now, chat.
I'm going to ask a question. Has everybody said what they wanted to say? Like, Tim, I haven't heard a lot from you, and I haven't heard a lot from Tom Tibbetts. Does anybody else want to make a contribution to their particular experience?
No, I'm listening to what he's saying and writing stuff down.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good tech here.
By the way,
How about you, Tim? Have you?
Have I heard voices?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. Never heard them as a child. As a child, I saw spirits. And I did hear voices too. I communicated with my great grandfather at his grave, where he died before I was born. But as it went away as an adult, I heard voices from time to time. And then I got involved, or I could get involved. Actually, it's always was involved. A guy that's my auditor now, he told me, he said, some people work to resolve their home universe, and some people bring them into the physical existence. And somewhere along the way, some of mine.
Say that again.
Huh?
Say that again, Tim. I didn't hear it. Some people can.
I said some people resolve their home universe, and some people bring them into physical universe, into physical existence. And that is what happened with me. I actually had people in bodies coming to me throughout my life, and sometimes solid bodies, and sometimes they weren't. And I didn't really realize what was happening at the time. Later on, well, to make a long story short, when I'd have contact, I'd have amnesia follow. In other words, I'd have spiritual contact with these beings, but I'd unknow it afterwards. And eventually, I'm not a religious person, but at the time I did walk outside and when I realized I was in bad shape, and said a prayer to let me know what I need to know to survive. And my memory started coming back of these events. And I, picked a name out of a hat and go into that city, and somebody being there waiting for a meeting, things like that. And long story short, eventually I went back into that same city when my memory was restored, looking for that individual. Well, he had amnesia then. He was an older gentleman. And I had a series of I guess you would call them visions. And what one particular part of it was I was in a place that I'd never been to before, and I started to have this vision. Actually, it was Revelation 17, the beast and the harlot. Of course, I didn't know what it was. It scared the shit out of me. And it was like, well, it basically started the night before. It was a couple of days of biblical type visions, a voice speaking to me, and then all the church bells, a horn blew, all the church bells started ringing, and there was a voice communicating with me that the rapture began, and then the horn blew and the bells started ringing, the rapture has begun. And it's like one of those things that somebody was talking about earlier. I think Hank was talking about. You wonder if other people are seeing what you're seeing. So I found myself looking up at a building at a group of 7 white doves. And a police officer came up and we had a conversation. I asked him if what I was doing. I said, I'm just doing time. I said, I'm not harming anything. And I asked him if he saw those doves. He said, yes, I see them. And you hear those bells and the horns blowing? I said, what's going on? He said, the churches are doing something, apparently. He leaves. As long as I'm free to do what I want to, he leaves. Another police officer comes up. We have the identical same conversation, but there's another police officer on the beat. And so the following night, basically, I'm witnessing this vision, and it occurred to me that I had dreamed about this 2 weeks prior here in North Carolina, and this was occurring in Tupelo, Mississippi. And it was exactly like it was, the same landscape, the same Yetzel landscape and all. And most of the time, the beings, I could hear them clearly. There was one that was constantly muffled. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but everybody else was crystal clear. And so it was, they communicated through symbolism, holographic projection. I got frightened one time because the beast,
excuse me,
huge tree.
Excuse me, Tim.
Yeah.
There's a lot of symbols. I mean, these symbols and projections could go on and on. What were they communicating? What were they trying to get across?
It was pretty much what was going on behind the scenes with us and our future, and it's really of a nature that I'm not really at liberty to discuss. But in answer to your question, yes, I hear voices. Normally, I don't. Normally, I see holographic projections. As I was saying, this here was a telepathic projection because I got frightened. And when I did, I was about ready to, flee the area. The image froze. The image froze, and this facsimile come down like it was coming down out of the sky or something. And these 2 men were in it was like there was a costume. It was like an old theater costume. These 2 men separated costume, and I saw them and I recognized them, and I forgot them instantly. Mm-hmm. And it started back. So the bottom line is they were they were using some kind of theater costume imagery that was somehow projecting to me in full 3D reality. And so that's the answer to the question, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a scenario, and it sounds like one scenario on top of the other. It's like a stream of scenarios, which is great. What would concern me would be this stuff taking up my bandwidth. If you have an interest in writing this stuff down and making it into a novel or even a screenplay or a movie where you just deal with all of these visuals and communications as artistic communication, that's great. But there is such a thing as spiritual spam. In other words, I can project scenarios to somebody who's receptive. Of course, it's not fun doing it to somebody that's not receptive, but there are people that are very receptive. I mean, I can communicate to these people, and not just the Five of Diamonds, but just almost anything. It could be an Oriental adventure. It could be a sailing adventure. It could be a political scenario, and start doing this with them, and they're just watching it. It's not going anywhere. There's nothing that they can do with it. They don't interpret it. It's just there, and it's there, and it's there. And I mean, I get some of this a little bit because I'm very open to music. I can hear songs. I can hear music. I can hear new music that no one's heard before. If I want to play this music, I could even write it down, but I could just sit and listen to it, and it's entertaining up to a point. Then I want them to clear the bandwidth. Okay, everybody out of the pool. I don't want to see pictures of fantastic animals, although it's a fascinating thing. I love that kind of thing. You see books written by people that have fantastic animals. All these are images. Probably they're getting those fantastic animals from beings that are kind of dictating it, which is great. But the point is, where am I going with this? I have things that I want to do with my life, and this stuff can take up energy and bandwidth. Is there some way to evaluate the import of what's going on in the moment? I don't know if is this. Does anyone not understand what I'm saying?
You pretty much lost me.
I figure the energies, nothing's coming back here. What about you, Norma?
Well, yeah, I was following along. There's images for images' sake, but where's the message, and what does it mean, and how does this help me in my life? That's what I was getting. Yeah,
well, you're getting it. That's good. Somebody's getting it. Paul, what did you? Paul is gone.
No, I'm right here.
What is your?
There were two Pauls.
Oh, that's right. You're the. I'm looking for the. When you're not talking, your little image disappears.
Well, he has a phone. That's it.
Very, very spiritual. So, what was your impression of what I was saying?
I think what she just said was my impression too.
Oh, okay. You have a take on that, Tim?
Well, yes, I do. I got what you're saying. It's useless images don't mean anything if there's not communication behind them. There was a communication. There was a verbal communication. The imagery is not what was really scaring me. It seemed so vaguely familiar, and it, in present time, I didn't understand it until I talked to somebody who was familiar with with the Bible, and he told me it was Revelation 17 and 18. But yes, I got what you're saying. I weren't clear. There was communication, verbal communication also.
Okay.
So, it was relevant to our situation. The symbolism I did not understand and how it applied to me.
I see. Yeah, that's good. Something I like to share about working with people with beings. I mean, I've been doing this for nearly 50 years, and it always amuses me when a person tells me that they're hearing a voice and they know that it's coming from Mother Mary. And I said, "How do you know it's coming from Mother Mary?" "Well, she's there. She's dressed like Mother Mary." Or, "It's coming from an angel." What does this angel look like? "Well, it's an angel. She's got big wings on her shoulders." Well, this is a rather recent idea of what an angel is. I mean, in the Hebraic tradition, an angel is anyone who has been sent by God to perform some kind of an act. It could be a bum lying in the sewer. You see, and he's there to convey something to you, or to make an impression, or to do something that makes him an angel. They say be careful to respect everybody, because that person that you're talking down to might be an angel. So it's a different concept of an angel. A lot of people feel that they're talking to Jesus. How do you know it's Jesus? Well, he's this kind of Norwegian-looking guy with long brown hair. And does he look Middle Eastern? Oh, no. Is he dark? No, he's white, like in the pictures. What are you actually looking at here? Well, here's my take on that. A being does not have an image. A being does not have a costume. A being does not wear clothes. But they can mock them up. You yourself could go and visit somebody, and you could try this as an experiment. In the middle of the night, while you're sleeping, go and visit a friend and speak to them. You can find out the next call and the next day and ask them if they had a dream about you. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And you can also do this. You can go and visit a friend and appear to them as Goofy the dog. Just mock yourself up as Goofy the dog. Don't tell them you're Goofy the dog. Just, you can mock up this essence around you, this image around you, and inhabit it, and go and visit someone. They will see Goofy the dog. Gee, I had a dream about Goofy the dog last night. Boy, Tom, it sounded a little bit like you. So beings can do this. A being can appear as the devil. Does that mean it's the devil? It's a being. It's a being, because he's got red and he's got horns and he's got something that you don't like. It doesn't mean that you're talking to this historical creature. You see, but you don't know. How do you know? Hey, there's only one way to know. You got to talk to him. You got to talk to him. You start out by saying hello, get him to answer back. If he won't answer back, then you're already dealing with a problem maker.
Mhm.
If he does answer back, if he's insolent or behaves badly, that's good. It's a problem maker. The world is full of problem makers.
Mhm.
You know, excuse yourself, go on your way. Unless you have something else you want to ask him. But if he gives you an answer, if he's nasty or vindictive, you might ask him if there's something that you have done to him. If this is some kind of revenge or retribution. If there is, believe me, he'll tell you about it. You see? And you get into a conversation. You might find out that he's acting out, and really, you get down to the bottom of it. He might be asking for help. See, anybody who's worked with David St. Lawrence has been aware of the necessity to expect that. A lot of these beings that seem to be disruptive are really asking for help. A lot of when you start addressing them directly, they just disappear because they don't want to play that game. They just stop bothering you. They go away. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know until you talk to them. There's another class of beings which is a little complicated that I don't know if anybody here who has worked with this, but you can have a whole assemblage of beings in another dimension who are associated, and maybe they have a common goal to teach. So they want to appear to people and share insight or motivation or something. But people don't respond well to a big gang of people. So what they do is they create a being and they operate through that being.
Mhm.
And you could call it a group soul or something like that. Usually these guys, in my experience, are very, very sentient and very benevolent.
Mhm.
Of course, I suppose they
Can
could.
I offer a separate reality?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I had a pre-clear audit, an auditing situation with somebody who, during World War II, bombed a city. Not with that body, but anyway, a lot of the citizens of that city who were killed followed him and just caused his life to be havoc,
Mm-hmm.
to be pain.
Yeah.
And I got him into communication with them and got them to resolve their issues, both sides. And he lived happily ever after.
Bravo. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Cluster beings associated with a major event, or that's very rewarding.
yeah.
Yeah. That is yeah, what Norma called it a cluster. They're cluster beings. Yeah, we remember we worked with Norma, you and
Melinda?
and Maggie.
Maggie, yeah.
Worked with me about stuff from Germany.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. What I was actually talking about was something a little bit differently, and a little bit different. And if you care to read a book called Messages from Michael, you can hear about that reality. It's
like an oversoul that is a combination of thousands of beings who have
Ascended or
ascended. Yeah.
rejoined each other, and they're very easy to communicate with, and they're very powerful. And there's usually, in my experience, quite a sense of humor involved. They are not intimidating. I've never seen them have an intention to intimidate. What is frustrating is when you are trying to talk to somebody who's been trained in OT3 and feels that any combination of beings has to be a cluster with a traumatic incident at the basis of it. And they want to break apart this cluster and release these beings or free them or make them go away. And you're talking to someone who you recognize is the manifestation of a group that's a different phenomenon. It's not a cluster phenomenon. I have run into that doing a session with somebody that many of us know, and it was frustrating to me. And so, you can't share that reality. It may be very different now, but at the time that it happened, it was just, frustrating.
I just interject here because it is 4:30.
Yes. Oh, I want to call your attention. You've all received emails for a survey, for an event evaluation survey. Also, if you look at your chat window.
I don't have a chat window.
Oh, okay. Well, then
Okay.
you should receive an email.
Uh-huh.
I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, you came in kind of late. I'm hoping you receive an email from it. Somewhere, I would be willing to bet that somewhere there's a chat window on your screen. It's probably very hard to find. But does everyone else see the chat window?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tim?
I did the survey already.
Oh, good. And Tim? Tim?
I do.
Oh, okay. You
I
see.
see the survey.
Okay. There's
Right, I see it now.
yeah. There's a link there to a survey.
Okay.
And
I just checked my email and there's nothing other than the confirmation of the meeting.
oh, really? Okay.
We'll send you another one.
We'll send you another
Go
one.
right ahead.
Sure. And Paul, do you see yours?
Not yet. I'm looking right now.
Do you have your chat window open?
No, he's on the phone.
No, I don't.
Another one on the phone. Okay. We'll just send you. We'll just email you those.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So it's under participants.
Yeah. Let me share something else with you. We have established a website called Voices Within, and it's not populated yet. I have some essays and things that I'm going to put on it, and we're going to be promoting this to people who have perhaps not had our experience working with beings, and try to share some of these realities in a way that can help people, especially people that have been have looked for help and have been told that they are schizophrenic or had some kind of diagnosis based on the idea that they're hearing beings, which is endemic, and we think that we can help them. You might
Can
find.
I interject something here?
Of course.
And this is the definition of help, not the definition, but the way people feel about help. if you say, can I assist you? It's an equal to equal. If you say, can I help you? It's a superior to inferior.
Said well.
And
That's a good point.
Said
Yeah.
well.
and I can't stand the word help, to be honest. I think that it really says, hey, I really know everything, and I can do for you whatever. But if I say assist, it means I'm on an equal footing with you, and let me see what we can together do.
Right.
We
I like that.
Well,
Yeah.
I like that. I think you're right. I'll be starting out with people by offering them consultations,
mhm.
and of course you have to, if you're offering consultations, you're setting yourself up as some kind of uh, uh, an authority. I mean, even if you say a person has a headache, and 15 different ways to get rid of a headache, what do you say to them?
I say, can I assist you?
Sure, it
Or-
becomes very
Because it empowers them.
sure.
You're not looking to empower you. You're looking to empower them.
Well, I appreciate your observation. I agree with it to some extent. Remember, it is a semantic issue,
Mhm.
and sometimes I just want to say to somebody else, "Hey, can I have a little help here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, can you help me with this? I mean, this is what I do when I call tech support. Uh, I don't tell them, your damn website's not working right. What are you going to do about it? I mean, you say, God, I could really use your help. And
Mhm.
set them up
That's
in a position, and you grant them authority to come in and help you.
right.
Yeah. Well,
Oh, work on that. Help in it versus assist, or we'll definitely take that under consideration. I like the word assist. I think it's
yeah, I think it's great.
thank you.
I think it's great. And
Okay.
find some more synonyms.
The old term, it's a therapeutic alliance.
It's the meta communication that we're talking about, not
Yeah.
the definition communication.
Right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. It's been absolutely delightful, and I hope that somebody's learned as much as I have. And
We have to figure out another topic that is as engaging as this one has been.
oh my goodness, we've got a few of them, and we've got a few new ones too. That a few new ones. In fact, I came up with one talking to Roger. Yeah, I'm looking for the damn thing on my desk. I know I've got it here, but let me see. I don't want to tie you guys up, but oh yes, I've got a couple here that were not on the original poll. Did everybody see the original poll?
No.
I did a poll, yeah. A couple of others. One is the subject of overrun.
Mhm.
What is overrun? Now, we usually use this in terms of a session where you go too far. You keep doing what you're doing to the point where it becomes a negative result. And many years ago, I saw a lecture at Sergeant Gabody's center by a guy named Barry Fairburn. Has anybody ever heard of Barry Fairburn?
No.
British. And he had some very interesting things to say about overrun. It made a big impression on me. The other subject is that of being on purpose.
Thank you.
Uh,
That was
who-
my phone.
uh-huh.
It was lovely.
Well, at this late date, I don't want to mute you, but yeah, being on purpose. You know, we were taught in the Big S that everyone has the same purpose.
Bullshit.
Yeah, 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 which is a wrong indication and such. But I've observed that when a person's on purpose, there's a lot of serendipity in their life, and they accomplish things that people can't understand how they're accomplishing. A lot to be said about that. Does anyone here familiar with Jalaluddin al-Rumi,
Mm-mm.
poet and philosopher? R-U-M-I. Yeah, he was a Persian philosopher that moved to Anatolia and set up a university. And he's a very, very famous philosopher and writer. He did an essay called The One Thing. And you might want to Google that. Just Rumi, R-U-M-I. And the name of the essay is The One Thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's in translation, but I found it very, very powerful. So I will bid you guys adieu, and I am thinking of having this every other week. So perhaps we will reconvene in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And if you have some other subject that you feel would be worthy of our attention, fine. Also, I would like to have more people on board. We could actually handle 30 people,
Wow.
which may be too many, but we have the tools to do it here. And it
What
would
are
be
what are your needs for a person? I mean, what qualifications?
curious.
Breathing.
Yeah.
No, really.
Uh,
Seriously.
seriously, be willing to communicate,
Mm.
or being willing to listen. I would not mind somebody just stopping in and just listening,
Mm-hmm.
and I might squeeze them a little bit to contribute, but if they some people are just happy just listening until they feel safe, until they feel that it's relevant, and I'm happy to have someone like that. But there are people that I know because there are this group, the portal, the Free Spirit Journal community portal. There are almost 90 people in it. Almost 90 people. So they're interested enough to have signed up. And then for these events, we get like, sometimes 14, 15, 18 people sign up, and 4 or 5 people show up, or 6 people. I'm grateful for them, but I have not learned what happened to the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of catch them and interview them and try to find out. I mean, Roger is an awful lot of fun to talk to and has a lot.
Roger Buswarva?
Buswarva, yes.
Okay.
But
He hates me, by the way.
well, okay.
Just for what it's worth.
Well, he can do that, That doesn't mean that he
I'm
can't.
fine with that. I'm just want you to know up front.
Hank.
Thanks. Yes.
Hank, I think your basically meeting minutes that you publish afterwards is going to continue to create energy and interest. And that's how you're going to get more people.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's a great suggestion. Thank you so much.
What about the video of this?
Well, it's excellent. It's so excellent. because it gives those that didn't have time or had meeting commitments or client commitments and they wanted to be here, but they have obligations they have to live. It gives them the chance to vicariously participate with you guys, and they get aware of their home.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We will do that. We've got this recording. We'll manicure it a little bit, get rid of the empty spaces, and we'll post this.
Does anybody have a problem?
I think I was going to say it's nice when you find a community that you actually can commune with.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
My dog wants royalties. I'm just kidding.
Your dog is a sweetheart.
Yes, he is.
well, I'm going to end off here, and thank you all very much, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Adios.
All right.
Thank you.